How fitting that in our last School of Real Madrid video, we spent so much time talking about Real Madrid's Champions League DNA, and not long after we released the video, Real Madrid scored 2 late goals in the 90th and 91st minute to send the game into extra time in the second leg of the Champions League semi-finals versus Manchester City. Then, in extra time, Benzema scored the decisive penalty to send Ancelotti's men into the final, and just like that, after many heart palpitations and ripped vocal cords, we are in the final again for the 17th time. And now, Real Madrid will face possibly their biggest test of all against Liverpool on the 28th of May in Paris. So how will that pan out? Let's take a look at what Real Madrid will need to do and, of course, not do. Liverpool have had a counter-pressing scheme baked into their DNA for 7 years now, thanks to master tactician Jurgen Klopp. That's not a great match for Real Madrid, to be sure. As good as this team is, it's not the same press-resistant team it was in the 2016-2017 season when Marcelo, Toni Kroos, and Isco invited pressure only to rip through defensive lines. Since beating Liverpool in the 2018 Champions League final, Real Madrid, until now, were eliminated by high-pressing teams like Ajax, Manchester City, and Chelsea. Even this season, they barely held on to get here. And now they face the ultimate test. Liverpool allowed just 8.07 passes per defensive action, the fewest in the Premier League. In the Champions League, they've attempted 632 pressures in the final third, which is more than any team in the competition. They like to defend high up the pitch and win it back as soon as possible so as to avoid any transition attacks against them, especially given how much their fullbacks push up the field. Liverpool hold a high line both on and off the ball. They defend in a 4-3-3, but often it morphs into a 2-1-4-3 with the center backs at the halfway line and the fullbacks and midfielders higher up the pitch, dominating the ball or winning it back in the opponent's half. While Liverpool's press is good, it's their counter press where they make their money. It's so instinctively good and collective that at times it feels like they enjoy losing the ball just so they can win it back in a more advantageous position. Take their recent game against Tottenham in the Premier League as an example. Tottenham in Antonio Conte's 3-4-3 deep block defended Liverpool about as well as any team can defend Liverpool when Klopp's men were building out from the back. Conte's men plugged the space between the lines and tracked Sadio Mane's movement off the ball. Anytime Liverpool's midfielders and wingers had the ball, they had little options in the box to hit, and they usually forced the pass into the box to a heavily marked Mane. But it's one thing to defend Liverpool and another to escape their press, and that's where they were hurt the most. Anytime Tottenham intercepted a pass or put in a successful tackle, they were immediately hounded and Liverpool would win the ball in dangerous areas to create artificial transition attacks. It should be noted though, that although Tottenham struggled greatly to escape their half, they still managed to draw the game 1-1 in what was a deserved result. Conte's men generated far fewer chances, but the ones they did generate were great. To some extent, you could compare Son and Kane to Vinicius and Benzema. Both pairs are devastating on the counterattack, and both pairs can overperform their XG. Real Madrid would likely be able to score the same amount of goals as Liverpool with a lower XG, just like they did in the first leg against Manchester City. Tottenham were also able to exploit the space behind Liverpool's wingbacks on several occasions. Though Liverpool's midfield is primed to pounce on the counter-press, they are also close enough to their center-backs to track and cover ground defensively. But if you catch them with the right pass down the flank, like Tottenham did on sequences like this, Real Madrid's wingers can do damage. Real Madrid's success in this game will not just come down to the efficiency of their attackers. Their initial 1 or 2 passes out from the back from the defensive line and midfield to get the ball to the wingers will be very key. It was encouraging that Real Madrid zipped up their defensive structure against Manchester City in the second leg and contained their runners, but as we know, against Liverpool, it's not just enough to be good defensively, they also need to be great and quick on the ball. Now let's look at some key matchups, and there are 4 of them that stand out to us. Number 1, Liverpool's offense on set pieces versus Real Madrid's defense on set pieces. It's been no secret, Real Madrid are woeful defending set pieces and crosses in the post-Ramos-Varane era. They consistently let free headers in the box, and that will be extra problematic against Liverpool, who have dominant players in the air. Virgil van Dijk has the most aerials won, 38, of anyone in the Champions League this season. Number 2 on that list, Joel Matip with 30. Real Madrid will have to be extra sharp to ensure no one is let free. Number 2, Mohamed Salah versus Ferland Mendy. Salah's form has dipped a little bit since the African Cup of Nations, but he's still devastatingly good. He will want to cut and pass Forlan Mendy, and Mendy can't allow him to do that the way he did with Mahrez on a few sequences in the semifinals. By extension, the coverage from David Alaba in that half space will need to be foot perfect. Liverpool will look to Salah often. No player in the Champions League this season has been the recipient of more progressive passes, 114, than the Egyptian. Number 3, Vinicius Jr. versus Trent Alexander-Arnold. It goes without saying, but Vinicius' efficiency in taking advantage of that space behind TAA will be a huge factor. In Paris, he wasn't able to get going versus Achraf. At Stamford Bridge, he cooked Andreas Christensen until Tuchel took him out. At the Etihad, he had one moment of brilliance against Fernandinho, and in the second leg of the semi-finals, he struggled against Kyle Walker. Can Vinicius, one of the best wingers in the Champions League this season, have a high volume of attacks on that wing to make Trent uncomfortable? Number 4, Real Madrid's bench mob versus Liverpool's draining energy. A theme this season in the Champions League is that in the last quarter of the game, Real Madrid take over and dominate their opponents. The bench mob, spearheaded by Eduardo Camavinga, Rodrigo Goes, and Lucas Vazquez, enters the field. The starters remaining on the pitch get a second wind of energy, Modric regains a lung, and Carlos' men play bully ball and submit their opponents, who are typically drained from pressing all game, into paralysis. Can they do it again in Paris in a one-off game that's not at the Bernabeu? We'll see. Whatever happens in Paris, it promises to be a fascinating encounter between two of the most storied clubs in European football history. Thanks for watching this week's School of Real Madrid video. If you like our work, please hit subscribe and turn notifications on and help us grow so that we can continue to put time into these videos for you to enjoy. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.